We have a place for flats that have been sterilized and then flats that aren't. So these are obviously flats that haven't been washed or sanitized. So, and they probably don't need to do it this time of year. Neither do we generally. And so, but what we would have in the winter is we would have another section that's labeled, these are sanitized. And that's really key, because in the winter time, if you're growing sunflower, you plant in that, forget about it. You're going to get fungus, and you're not going to get anywhere at all. Basically, they got their pea shoots going, and they've got radish going. Looks like they've eliminated sunflower, which, you know, whatever sells. Yeah. We can harvest some of this. We can plant some stuff too. And one thing that's cool to check out in here that I do the same, and I'm really glad they did it. It's in French, but right on that steel U-line table right there, they've got these procedures, right? It's just like everything on this farm. They've got the procedures laid out. When do things get planted? How do they get planted? It's all there. With microgreens, it's so good to have these standards, because it's consistently done all the time, so there's no guesswork, especially if somebody's relatively new, then they can see how it's done there. Here's 2 successions of pea shoots. You know, one thing I like about microgreens is that you can see really easily the crop development and understand succession. And I find that same principle applies very well to the field. You'll see it easier once you start doing greens, and then once you understand greens, you'll see how it works with carrots. And then you'll see how it works with beets, and then later down the chain you'll see how it works with doing successions of cucumbers and tomatoes, things that aren't normally successioned in the same way. But microgreens, you're doing so many of them so constantly, and you see that difference that these I think are just 1 week apart. Really easy to see. So what I think we're going to do is do some planting and stuff. The most ideal situation is to lay out all the flats with one bag. But typically what you've got when you're soaking seeds, so whether it's pea shoots or sunflower shoots, you've got a tote that has holes in it that's like a sieve, like a strainer, and then you just got a tote. So when they're going to soak the seed, they'll put the appropriate amount of seed in here, they'll weigh that seed to get the right amount, or a cup measurement or whatever you use. Some people just do everything by volume measurements, or some people do everything with weight. Both work. You'll fill up your seed, you'll fill this up with water, that'll basically sit for the night, and then in the morning you'll drain it out. It'll all just drain, you'll probably just drop it there, the water will drain through. Then you'll rinse this, you'll just spray it with water, then you'll plant it. The cool thing about some of the soaked seed, like say pea shoots, sunflower shoots, buckwheat, wheatgrass, even corn would work this way, is if you can't plant right away, that's okay. You can drain your seed once it's been soaked, rinse it, maybe put a little a lid on it so this doesn't get in sun, or put it in a shady spot, and it's already growing, right? So now that's been soaked, it's growing. I found I can buy sometimes 2 days of time with pea or sunflower before I plant them. They'll start to sprout, and you can still plant them, but if the sprout gets too long, then it's harder to get a good crop. You'll have a little bit of yield loss because that sprout will have to reorientate itself down. That costs you production time. What is good to do is have a receptacle that's pre-measured for your soil. That speeds everything up with planting. They're using this. They're going 2.5. I actually go 3 liters per flat, because I like to have my soil right to the top, because that way it's gonna sink down, and then when you harvest, you get right to the top. You get a slightly higher yield. Let's just see how much they get with these. They go 2.5, and she said heaping.
Do you like your soil to be wet before you put it in there?
No, I wet it after. And so, do we have our watering one somewhere? Here, I'll just move this down here and fill these up. You can buy this kind of thing. You can get, this is the type of thing I like to use, but I have one that's 3 liters. I like this is like, it's exact, and this is like, this will break, right? So I like to give her when I'm doing all this stuff, so I want the tool to be strong. You know, one comment on these 1020s, these 1-inch deeps. This is the standard in microgreens, but they always break at the hilt or on the corners. So what you end up doing is just doubling them up, to increase their rigidity, and you'll just like eventually you'll just use 2 each time, but you don't always have to if they're still good. See, this is that kind of stuff. That's what you don't want. Like when you have your soil mix in there, it should be sifted. So we have a sifter. They have one over there. It's got some flowers on it at the moment. And you could actually do it right through this table. But you take your soil from the bag and you sift it through a screen. That way it gets out all these chunks, because these chunks slow me down. Right now I have to deal with that. And when you're doing microgreens on scale, this stuff is so repetitive that you want every little thing you're doing to go fast. Because, like, you know, I've seen operations where they plant 2,000 flats a week, and so if there's anything that's slowing them down, it's like you're doing that 2,000 times. So if it takes you an extra 3 seconds every flat, it doesn't take long for that to be costing you days of work. So when you've got your this, and then where's that bucket of seed?
Curtis,
Thanks, man.
are the trays perforated on the bottom?
Yeah, they have holes in them. Yeah, I prefer the hole trays. Some people use holeless trays. If you use holeless trays, you really got to be careful with your watering. Like you can't, if you overwater, you're hooped. But some people do bottom watering with them, and the way they do it, Eric at Steadfast does it a bit. Where's Eric? I don't know if he does it with all of his micros, but what he does is he puts a perforated flat into a holeless flat, and then he bottom waters. He lifts it up and bottom waters, and then drops it down. The only reason you would do that is if you were doing things indoors and you didn't want to get water everywhere. That's why they do that, because they have a little shelf that they do everything in stock because it's cool. But to do it on scale, it's not worth the time. Again, I can't stress the chunks. That just slows everything down. But we get it, you know, even enough. Can you guys all see? And then these are so easy to make. It's just the shape of your flat, so it's 10-20 essentially. But what you want to do when you make one of these is make it so that it's a little bit smaller than the flat, because the sides of a flat get smaller, and so if it's too big, you won't be able to push it down. I just know that from experience. I'm screwing it up, and then we press our flats. Now, we don't plant yet, we water. And I do that the same with everything, even dry micros. Just because I'm going to water it, it's going to settle, and then I'm going to water it again. So it's really going to soak up more water. You got it there, Nick? Yeah. Oh, right on. These are the, we haven't talked about some of this infrastructure yet, but this is the standard fare for nursery watering. That's all dram. So they did what I did. They've got the dram on-off valve there, a dram wand, and then this is the red. It's all, you get these anywhere, but it has like 1,000 holes. That's the standard for watering. I have 2 when I do microgreens. I have this one, so that's fairly heavy. You can see that. But there's another one called the Wonder Waterer, which is about twice as fine as this. And you have to slow down the pressure, otherwise it's too high. But it's nice for watering really, really dainty microgreens. If you're growing, like all these crops would be fine, but if you were doing a crop of bull's blood beets or amaranth and you water with this, you knock everything down, and that actually costs you like 1 or 2 days of production, because it just consistently slows it down, has to spend its energy getting itself back up, and then it also causes what's called dampening off in there. So when you have dainty microgreens, you want to have a different watering one, a lighter one. So we'll use this one to water all the commodity crops. Go and do that, and then we'll put the lighter one on to do the smaller ones. And we'll have them in different places in the greenhouse. We'll have all the small specialty microgreens in one place, and then all the commodity ones in another. Plant some radish. This looks like a radish mix. And I'll just show you guys. This is what I do too. I mix. I would never say mix any other seed, but radish you can mix. You know, in the field I can mix Salanova and plant it in the same bed. Besides from those exceptions and maybe a couple others, I never mix seed. You know, beds and microgreens are all the same thing. So that's a mix. Some of the darker, bigger seeds. The sun grows for micros. Whatever the other one is for the plugs. So they do. What I use for doing volume measurements for micros is I have a mini cup like this that's 100 mils. I love that one for doing anything like that's dry seed, and I can just look, do it, look, spread. Another fast way to do it is if I'm doing, say, a bunch of like odds and ends microgreens, is I have those little mini mason jars. You know the little short ones for like relishes and stuff like that? I leave a bunch of those in the greenhouse, and say I've got to do, it's just like a garden variety. I got to do 2 flats of basil, 4 flats of cabbage, 2 flats of amaranth, you know, whatever, a mix. What I'll do is I'll pre-weigh everything with the jars. So I'll go and have my scale, do my, with some varieties you have to do weight because the volumes are so small. Like basil I do 6 grams, and I can't accurately get a measurement with volume with that. So I just have a little like a drug dealer scale. The ones that are like really accurate, they go down to 1/10 of a gram. So I'll measure out everything, put it in the jars. I'll put the jars on the flats like that. I'll set all that out, and then I'll go and do my spreading. So that's if I'm doing a lot. That's a good, the question was, am I labeling everything? I don't do it anymore just because I know what everything is, and if it's got to be uncovered, it's got to be uncovered. Like, the labeling isn't that important day to day. It's important when you're doing trials. Like, anytime I'm doing trials, and any microgreen grower is probably going to spend a number of months doing trials, then you want to label everything. You want to have the date, the crop or seed type, and how much seed you use per flat, and then you'll probably also put that into a spreadsheet. Scoops of radish per flat. So sprinkling dry seed, there's, you know, people do it in different ways. I kind of have a systematic way where I sprinkle and I zigzag my way down the flat, opposed to just broadcasting all over the place. So I kind of go at it like this, start, get a little sprinkle going, make my way down, and then at the end, if I have left over, then I'll kind of broadcast them. This does not look like enough seed. This is 2. I don't know if that's right. Maybe it's 3. See how I'm just kind of zigzagging on my way down the flat? And then at the end, I'll kind of just throw whatever's left. You're left-handed? Yeah. And so we'll water these again once they're planted, and then we'll stack them. And then that's basically the protocol every time. When we're doing wet seed, what you do is you go and you dump little piles of seed on each flat and you spread them out. Some people who want to be really, really accurate and don't trust their intuition with the piles will have like a volume cup that they'll just go boom, 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 spread it out, and done. Now that these are planted, they're watered again, and that's super important. Then they're stacked, and now that flat, that's how a planted flat should feel.
So you don't
Nice
push
and
them
heavy.
down in the soil?
Nope, you don't need to push them down.
Okay.
Nope. So there's some other microgreens. Empty flat on top. Throw that one right down there. And then they've got bricks. So we'll put that there, and then we'll put a brick on top of it. That'll sit for a week. It'll lift the brick up, uncover, goes on the shelf, gets watered, good to go, harvested 4 days later.
Maximum of 4 flats, or
I do 6.
6?
I can do 6.
Of any crops, or
Yeah.
sunflower?
Oh yes, any of the commodity crops, no problem. The only ones that might be problematic if you're doing too much, it would be basil.
Okay.
I think that's all. Yeah, 6 pots is pretty fine. Well, another thing that you can do too, depending on your climate, like down in Arizona, Eric has to, this is a common question, so I'll just answer it right away, is do you have to re-water these after they're covered? In my experience, no, but in Arizona, I was shocked to see that they stack them, cover them, and then they uncover them and water them every day.
But is it safe to sneaking to the
Good question. I don't think so, but that would be my assumption as well. But I saw them doing it while I was there for a week, and they had to do it every day. I've never had to do that.